We will see how things begin to fall apart for the Royal Fraternity of the Master Metaphysicians as lawsuits begin to fly over money. And serious charges of grand larceny, fraud, and embezzlement will be leveled at Schafer. Would Schafer go to prison? And what would happen to his cult when it fell apart? Would Schafer try to place all of the blame on Oliver Napoleon Hill's shoulders? Would this move work? All aboard the Kentucky Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine for our flight back in time, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger vehicle to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. Schafer and the 1940s World's Fair. It is not often that you find someone who truly backs up his or her convictions, but it seems to be the case with James Schafer. He truly believed in what he was teaching, but this conviction of faith would lead to huge trouble for Schafer later on. It has been reported that Schafer went to the 1939-1940 New York's World's Fair's officials. He proclaimed that the fair needed to dig up the newly placed Westinghouse time capsule. Schafer wanted a paper that had baby Jean's footprints placed inside of the capsule because she would be the only person still alive when the capsule was opened in 6940. Needless to say, this request was refused, as there were no articles stating that Schafer got his way with the officials. And we are pretty sure that the surprising request was met with a huge amount of skepticism. Separation of men and women. There were very strange components to the Schafer group. The men and women were placed in two different groups, which could lead to different forms of abuse of the situation. This was hinted in the news articles of the day, but never expressed outright. For instance, there were thousands of followers, of which the majority were middle aged women. Rumors flew around that there was more going on behind the scenes with these women. According to the source, Jean Gaunt, the immortal baby, quote, a witness later testified that it was common to see the women members hugging and kissing Schafer. Schafer explained these actions by saying, quote, I can't deprive them of that. It's their aspirin, unquote. Inside of the men's group of people, there was a secret society of men called the Storks, whose job it was to take care of the young mothers and their babies. They wore diaper pins on their lapels so that they could identify each other. The author of the Untold story of Napoleon Hill has a quote from an expert of Long Island history and James B. Schafer, whose name was Diane Holliday. Quote, he does seem to have an obsession with babies, unquote. Holliday tells me about the Schafer secret offshoot of the metaphysicians cult. Quote, for an extra $500, you had to be male, you had to wear a diaper pin on your lapel, you could make layettes and fold diapers for unwed mothers, unquote. And perhaps it was due to the separation of men and women that became a contributing factor in the lawsuits against Schafer. After all, without the communications going on between husbands and wives about their financial situation, it would be far easier to dwindle their bank accounts. Criminal charges filed against Schafer. The first known charges leveled at Schafer came from a former member of the Metaphysicians named Anna Weber of Queens, New York. She won a $2,500 judgment against Schafer in late 1940 for a loan he never repaid. Through this judgment, Schafer repaid the loan, most likely using other members' money. Other ladies began telling stories to the outside world of how the money was coming into the cult. After enough stories began to circulate, people inside of the cult began filing complaints in the Attorney General's office. Schafer, like his friend Napoleon Hill, was not opposed to using schemes to make money. And like Hill, the idea of selling illegal stock was an easy way to accomplish this. The following comes from the source, The Untold Story of Napoleon Hill. Quote, the cult was modeled after countless schemes that would come before it, as Schafer sold stock in his utopian community, charging between $100 and $400 per share. Wealthy visitors looking on the meaning of life also seemed to have a habit of finding their valuables missing during their stay. One woman reportedly lost two rings worth somewhere around $5,000. When the woman told Schafer, he supposedly replied, quote, nothing is lost in the infinite. You can think them back in your experience, unquote. But there were more complaints piling up. Here's another interesting complaint filed against Schafer according to Time. Quote, according to the Attorney General's office, Mrs. Ann Tomlinson, formerly of Monte Carlo, testified that she had contributed 3 truckloads of antique furniture, $10,000, and $7.50 a day for a private room at Peace Haven during the summer. Dormitory accommodations were $2 a day, unquote. We have found another testimony in the untold story of Napoleon Hill. Quote, in 1942, one of the cult's wealthiest members felt that she had been swindled. Mina Smith charged Schafer with grand larceny after she gave him money to invest in a magazine. In the early 1940s, the cult already had a magazine called The Truth's Digest, but they wanted more, or at least that was Schafer's story, unquote. The Attorney General of the state of New York began to take an interest in what was going on at Peace Haven when the complaints began piling up. Because of what was found, the alleged acts of pocketing money for himself, Schafer pled guilty and was sentenced in May of 1942. According to the same source, quote, the judge called Schafer, quote, a thief, an ex-Klansman who swindled his own organization, a spiritual faker, and a religious hypocrite who's been on the loose preying on the misguided women too long, unquote. Schafer would serve 5 years in Sing Sing prison. Blame laid on Hill's doorstep. A year into his sentence, Schafer filed an appeal with the Superior Court. He would claim that he did not understand that the lawyer was pleading guilty to the cases on his behalf and that he was totally innocent of the charges. This is part of Schafer's deposition to the court, as found in the source The Untold Story of Napoleon Hill. Schafer, it seems, started blaming Hill for the mess that he was in. Quote, one, Napoleon Hill came to me on or about the first day of December 1939 and told me that he had an opportunity to purchase a magazine called Psychology for about $5,000 and that we each could put up $2,500 and become partners. He told me that although the magazine was then in very bad condition, it had once made $25,000 a year and that he thought it could be built up again. I was interested, but told him that I hadn't the money. I decided, however, to try to borrow the $2,500 to go into the venture, and with that in view, approached Mina Smith for the loan. I clearly stated to her the purpose for which I wanted the money, what I had been told by Mr. Hill concerning the history of the magazine, and what he thought of the future prospects, notwithstanding its poor financial condition at the time. Unquote. So, was James Schafer telling the truth about Napoleon Hill? Possibly. It would fit his previous schemes. But also, we have to wonder if Schafer wasn't willing to throw Hill under the bus as well to get out of prison. Either way, Schafer's appeal was denied. Although it is conceded that Hill was an inspiration for the actions of Schafer, he was never charged with any crimes connected to Peacehaven, nor the Master Metaphysicians. In next week's video, we will cover what happened to the immortal Jean Gaunt and the Metaphysicians, and the divorce of Rosalie and Napoleon Hill. Thank you. Kentucky, Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the outstanding Appalachian people. Don't forget to hit the like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky, Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.